So, Tulsa King episode 5. Holy shit, that was good. I definitely understand why this show was recommended to me now. The last scene can be summed up with 3 V words. Visceral, violent, and vindicated. But before I jump too far ahead, I want to make sure I'm going to try to avoid spoilers, as usual. At least big ones. So, of course, after the events of episode 4, the various tussles and things, it's become quite obvious that Dwight and the bikers are on a collision course. I do love that at one point, one of Manny's fellow employees at the ranch, or stables, I'm not exactly sure which term is accurate there, not a cowboy. I think stables is probably right. But at one point, Manny runs into one of his fellow employees who is connected to the gang. And I love that they did that because it really plays into the idea that Tulsa is a small town. The problem is, I'm pretty sure Tulsa has a population well over 1 million people. And I'll just check that real quick. I'll be right back. Yeah, it's 1,023,988. So, the writers are, probably urbanites and not aware that in a city of 1 million people, it's very unlikely to run into someone who has that many connections to you. It's not unheard of, certainly, but it does seem like they're trying to paint Tulsa as some kind of small town. No. It may be far smaller than New York City, but that doesn't make it a hick town, to say the least. One moment, I have to pause again to sneeze. So, it starts off with what should have been an expected trip for Dwight. At the end of the last show, rather, his brother was dying and had probably died. So he returns to New York for the funeral. Which doesn't just show Dwight's loyalty to the family, but to his own family. And really shows some interesting contradictions in the man. Given that he had, or in the character, given that he had refused contact with his own actual child. Of course, because it was emotionally too difficult for him. And we see repeatedly in the show that when something that would cause an emotional reaction in many of us occurs, you could accuse Stallone of having no range whatsoever, because he remains fairly stoic and blank-faced. But he's really shown, and I really hope this is his dramatic talent, his dramatic chops showing through, because he shows moments, little tells, micro-expressions, which kind of come and go fairly quick, but in those moments, you know that he's feeling something. And personally, I find it very, very enjoyable, very entertaining, very engaging to see an aging actor. And sorry, Sly, you're getting old, bro. But, aren't we all? But watching his performance, there are moments where, for an old school guy, and I am mostly an old school guy, you see that flash of rage or that flash of hurt, or it's portrayed by a simple gesture like putting his head slightly down and casting his eyes towards the floor, where something happens that really causes him emotional pain, but he can't show that. Partly because he's been conditioned by prison not to show it, partly because that's just the world that he came from. But, and it's unfortunate that this happened, but there's one point where I think it may have been time constraints and editing, where there's a very emotional exchange between Dwight and his daughter Tina, where suddenly Stallone's eyes are very red, as if he'd been crying. And it's jarring because in the moment before, in the cut before, his eyes were not red. And it kind of shows a bit of a peek behind the scenes sort of thing, where there may have been some sort of conflict in, or some waffling in the decision-making process as to whether or not Stallone should cry on camera. And that they had then taken a subsequent take after he had cried and used, which is unfortunate because it's, again, it kind of breaks the character a little bit. But his actions afterwards, yeah, that's pure dadism right there. And it very much illustrates the world that he came from, the code of conduct that he follows, and it was very appropriate for the character, for certain. But also for someone like me, who, if you harm one of my family members, yeah, it's going to go very badly for you. Things went very badly for someone who had harmed one of his family members. Or for someone who may have potentially known, and then the person who actually did the harm. Meanwhile, back in Tulsa, the bikers have kind of shown this show shows without ever telling. It doesn't just tell you what's going on. It shows you. Early on with the scene with Manny, there is a moment of show don't, or tell not shown, but the show very much English rapidly redeems itself. Sorry. It's later on at night and I'm getting a little tired. But the show does rapidly redeem itself by not just leaving that tell hanging, but it actually shows what it was telling you about. And I'm not 100% convinced. I'm not sold on the leader of the bikers. He's clearly trying to play kind of evil and not quite right in the head. But the tone isn't quite as intimidating in the one scene where he's trying to be intimidating as it might have been. That said, clearly, what's his damn name? Bodie. There we go. Clearly, Bodie was intimidated. The actor playing Bodie, whose name I haven't picked up yet, he does a very good job of appearing intimidated without going over the top. the guy playing the villain, maybe it's a writing thing, maybe it's a direction thing, maybe it's just the actor, doesn't really quite sell it for me. Do I recommend the show? Abso-fucking-lutely. This is such a great show. Wow. Yeah. Out of 10, I mean, we're still looking 8, 8.5. With that error, 8.25, maybe. But still firmly in the I gotta recommend this show. And I'm very thankful, again, to the Shademaster for recommending it to me. Other than that, don't think there's a lot to really add. There's a moment where it's kind of unusual that Dwight reaches out to the ATF agent, saying that he needed to hear a friendly voice. Okay, fair. I don't think they necessarily had that much of a bond, so it does kind of show that Dwight is trying to make changes. But he himself at one point says it's a little late in the game for him to learn a new trade. It's a great line. Yeah, so other than that, I mean, like I say, still recommend. Yeah, so I'll wrap it up there. I hope you guys are having good days. I hope you continue to have good days. And of course, as always, rise and rise again until lambs become lions. Bye-bye.